There is a common belief that empires are built from ambition, that they expand because they want more land, more wealth, more glory. But history often suggests something quieter and more unsettling. That expansion does not always begin with desire. Sometimes it begins with fear. Sometimes power grows not from confidence, but from anxiety, from a sense that standing still is not safe. Russia offers one of the clearest places to feel this tension. Again and again, across centuries, its power stretched outward. Borders widened, authority hardened, control deepened. And yet beneath the surface, there lingered a persistent unease, a sense that stability was never guaranteed. The question is not whether empire brought power, but why power seemed to require empire at all. This inquiry is not about justification or condemnation. It is not about modern politics or moral verdicts. It is about a recurring pattern in how large systems respond to uncertainty, about how belief, geography, and human psychology quietly shape the structures we later call history. Russia emerged in a landscape that offered little natural protection. Open plains, long borders, few clear barriers. In such spaces, invasion was not an abstract possibility, but a recurring experience. Over centuries, threats arrived from multiple directions, often without warning. Security, in this environment, did not feel like a stable condition. It felt temporary, conditional. Gradually, a logic took hold. If borders were vulnerable, they had to be pushed outward. If distance created safety, then more distance meant more security. Expansion became a form of insulation. Control became a substitute for certainty. What looked like ambition from the outside often functioned internally as restraint against chaos. This logic did not require cruelty to operate. It required belief. A belief that order could only survive if it was extended. That stability was something earned through reach. That power, once achieved, had to keep moving or risk collapse. Over time, this belief hardened into a system. Authority became centralized not only for efficiency, but for coherence. A vast territory demanded coordination. Coordination demanded hierarchy. Hierarchy demanded obedience. The structure reinforced itself. Control was no longer merely political, it became psychological. The system trained its own expectations. Rulers inherited not just a throne, but a set of pressures. To hold power was to manage fear, fear of fracture, of invasion, of internal disorder. Each generation faced the same dilemma: loosen control and risk unraveling, or tighten it and preserve stability at a cost. History records different names, different eras, different ideologies. But the pattern repeats with slight variations. Expansion answers insecurity. Centralization answers complexity. Authority answers uncertainty. And each answer quietly creates the conditions for the next problem. Belief plays a subtle role here. Not belief as doctrine, but as assumption. The assumption that order is fragile, that people, left alone, drift toward disorder. That strength must be visible to be effective. Over time, these assumptions stop feeling like choices. They become background truths. They shape institutions before anyone consciously defends them. Empires often describe themselves as defensive even while advancing. Language bends to accommodate the tension. Expansion is framed as protection. Control becomes stability. Restraint becomes necessity. Meaning adjusts to fit structure. This is not unique to one civilization. Variations of the same pattern appear across history. Large systems tend to fear their own scale. The larger they grow, the more effort is required to hold them together. Complexity increases faster than trust. Administration expands, surveillance follows, authority thickens. At a certain point, power no longer feels like freedom. It feels like maintenance. In the Russian case, geography intensified this dynamic. Distance slowed communication. Diversity complicated unity. Borders remained porous. The system learned to anticipate threat even in silence. Over time, vigilance became identity. Suspicion became prudence. Control became synonymous with survival. Yet control has its own consequences. Systems built to prevent collapse often grow rigid. They struggle with ambiguity. They reward conformity. They treat uncertainty as danger rather than possibility. Stability becomes the highest value, even when it restricts movement, expression, or adaptation. This tension rarely announces itself openly. It lives in habits, in administrative reflexes, in inherited instincts about order and obedience. It persists even when ideologies change. Monarchies fall, revolutions rise, new languages replace old ones. But the deeper pattern remains strangely intact. What changes is the story told about it. At times, expansion is framed as destiny, at others as protection. Sometimes as historical correction, sometimes as moral duty. The narrative shifts, but the underlying pressure does not. The system continues to respond to the same anxiety, the fear that without control, everything might come apart. There is a quiet paradox here. Power built to prevent collapse often becomes most anxious about losing itself. The more it accumulates, the more it has to defend. The wider its reach, the more vulnerable it feels to disruption. Stability, once achieved, becomes something that must be constantly justified. This creates a strange feedback loop. Anxiety produces control. Control produces rigidity. Rigidity increases fragility. Fragility deepens anxiety. The system moves, but never rests. History does not present this as a single dramatic moment. It shows it as a rhythm. Long periods of consolidation, sudden expansions, sharp contractions, reassertions of authority. Each phase feels necessary from inside. Each appears excessive from the outside. And within these movements, individuals live ordinary lives. They adapt, they comply, they believe, they resist quietly or loudly. They make meaning inside the structures they inherit. The system feels abstract, but its consequences are intimate. This is where the pattern becomes less historical and more human. Because the impulse behind it is not exclusive to states. It appears wherever uncertainty meets responsibility. In institutions, in organizations, in families, even within individuals. When control feels like the only defense against disorder, restraint starts to look dangerous. Letting go begins to resemble collapse. The question is not whether this impulse is right or wrong. History rarely offers such clarity. The question is what it reveals about how humans relate to uncertainty, about how belief forms under pressure, about how easily protection becomes justification. At some point, the boundary between safety and dominance blurs, between order and control, between stability and fear. The system continues functioning, but its original purpose becomes harder to name. Looking back, it is tempting to label this as inevitability, to say geography decided everything, or culture, or leadership. But that explanation flattens the tension. What history shows instead is a repeated negotiation between anxiety and authority, playing out over centuries, adapting to new forms, never fully resolving. And perhaps that is the more unsettling thought. That expansion, in this sense, is not merely a strategy, but a response, a way of coping with uncertainty by externalizing it, by pushing it outward, by trying to place distance between fear and the self. If that is true, then the pattern does not belong to one nation or one era. It belongs to a deeper structure of human behavior, a way systems respond when they cannot tolerate ambiguity. Which raises a quieter question, one that history cannot answer directly. When we seek control in the name of stability, what uncertainty are we really trying to escape? And if stability depends on constant expansion, of authority, of influence, of order, at what point does the effort to prevent collapse begin to resemble the very thing it fears? The past does not resolve this tension. It only preserves its shape. A record of systems built to endure, shaped by belief, constrained by anxiety, moving forward not always because they want to, but because stopping feels more dangerous than continuing. If this reflection resonated with you, you can find more explorations like this on Timeless Questions, where history, power, and human nature quietly intersect.